So one of the other fun things about reading this book is it functions as a sort of reading list. Uh, Now, I guess let me ask this. Let me put it this way. Aside from the kind of obvious people like Lewis and MacDonald, who are still read today quite a bit, who would you recommend checking out as far as, like, say, fiction authors from mentioned in this book? Who would obviously H.G. Wells, everybody knows about him already, but some of the adventure stories, maybe also maybe some of the children's books that are not as well known today. Can you kind of say what you think people would particularly enjoy from those?
Well, the interesting thing is that because Tolkien read so widely in different genres, that in a way it's like I have to know what subject are people interested in because he did read so much in
Well,
so
let's
different.
take children's literature, for example. I feel like the first few chapters of this book are a great, book recommendation list for
Hmm.
parents.
Yes, well, I mean, for instance, we see that he enjoyed Lewis Carroll. He thought very highly of Alice in Wonderland. I mean, this is not obviously a forgotten work, but it's very relevant. Andrew Lang's collections of fairy tales were extremely important to him, and those are less well known today. And so I think those are definitely worth pointing out. He loved Beatrix Potter, and she's someone I would certainly encourage checking out. In later children's literature, a book that he thoroughly enjoyed was called The Marvelous Land of Snurgs by the rather improbably named E.A. Wick-Smith. And that's good fun. He actually calls it an unconscious source book for the hobbits. And it's also just good fun as a book to read. And that actually has been reprinted, so it's decently available.
What about of this kind of adventure genre? I mean, for example, Haggard, or I forget the name of the guy who wrote Tarzan, but you mentioned that he read him.
Yeah, Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Um, yes, I read that, and certain aspects of it are slightly offensive. I read that a couple of years ago, but what of those authors that were popular with boys? Not children's literature per se, but were popular with schoolboys of Tolkien's time. What holds up today, do you think?
Well, of the schoolboy literature, I would actually say surprisingly little holds up, and I actually quite a lot of discussion in those chapters of the way that Tolkien really moves forward from his engagement with these. I mean, just the amount of racism in schoolboy adventure of Tolkien's day is absolutely hair raising. It's just horrific. Uh,
Right.
so I don't recommend those to be read to your children. They're interesting to look at as a literary history thing, but it makes you really appreciate, wow, Tolkien did not pick up on those aspects of the reading of his
Right.
childhood.
Right.
And oh boy, they were there. But one author that does hold up really well, and this is an author that we know that Tolkien liked, is John Buckin, who wrote a bunch of different sort of thrillers, adventures. Now, interestingly, Buckin, he's the only author that Humphrey Carpenter notes as being one that Tolkien read, but he gives no titles. Because of that one mention, he's gotten a lot of attention in Tolkien scholarship. It's all been largely hypothetical because we didn't know the titles. But I was actually able to identify one specific book, Green Mantle. It's one of the Richard Hannay books that we know for a fact that Tolkien read, which is why I can include it in Tolkien's modern reading, because I don't include anything unless I can show that he read it. And one of the neat things about the Richard Hannay books by Buckin that I think Tolkien very probably liked and drew on is there's a real sense of moral responsibility. The character Richard Hannay, he gets into various scrapes and he gets out of them, but he always acts in a way that's moral. He doesn't stab an opponent in the back. He's brave, but he's not foolhardy. And I think we see in that the kind of moral quality of heroism that is attractive, I think, to Tolkien. It's the kind of thing we see in a figure like Aragorn. And so that's somebody that I would actually recommend to readers today. Read John Buchan. He's worth reading.